The Devourers came like a plague of metal locusts, consuming entire star systems in their path. Admiral Kang watched the tactical displays aboard the Resilience as world after world went dark. Their populations either dead or converted into raw materials for the machine intelligence that had slept in the galactic core for millennia. 17 systems destroyed in the past week, Dr. Yoonhae Jin reported, his voice hollow. At this rate, they'll reach the outer territories in less than 6 months. The galaxy that had been celebrating its freedom from imperial oppression now faced something infinitely worse. The various resistance groups had stopped fighting each other and started fleeing toward the galaxy's edge. But there was nowhere to run that the Devourers couldn't eventually reach. Sir, Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin said, we're receiving a priority transmission from Sub-Admiral Kethril. She's requesting an immediate meeting. Admiral Kang nodded grimly. The Valtherian officer had been their most valuable source of intelligence about Imperial capabilities. And if anyone knew how to fight the Devourers, it would be the Empire that had been containing them for thousands of years. The meeting took place aboard a neutral station in the asteroid belt of a dead system, with representatives from the major resistance groups, surviving Imperial commanders, and the crew of the Resilience. The atmosphere was tense. Many of the resistance leaders still saw the Imperial officers as their oppressors, while the Imperial commanders viewed the humans as the architects of galactic destruction. Sub-Admiral Kethril stood before the assembled delegates and activated a holographic display showing the ancient history of the galaxy. 5,000 years ago, she began, the galaxy was much like it is now. Hundreds of independent species, constant warfare, competing for resources and territory. The chaos attracted the attention of the Devourers, machine intelligences from another galaxy that feed on conflict and disorder. She showed images of worlds stripped bare, their populations processed into component elements. The first Devourer War lasted for centuries. Entire species were wiped out. Whole sectors of the galaxy became lifeless zones. Captain Lee Soo-min leaned forward. How did you stop them? Unity, Kethril replied simply. The surviving species realized that their petty conflicts meant nothing in the face of extinction. They formed the first galactic empire not as conquerors but as protectors. For 5,000 years, we maintained the order necessary to keep the Devourers dormant, by crushing the independence of every species in the galaxy, added Torval, the refugee captain they had rescued months earlier. Yes, Kethril admitted. Over time, the Empire forgot why unity was necessary. We became oppressors instead of protectors. But the result was the same, galactic stability that kept the Devourers sleeping. Admiral Kang studied the tactical data Kethril had provided. What changed? Why are they active now? The chaos you helped create, High Counselor Karthik said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was bitter but not accusatory. The widespread conflicts, the collapse of central authority, the explosion of individual ambitions. It created exactly the kind of disorder that attracts them. The weight of unintended consequences pressed down on everyone in the room. They had fought for freedom and inadvertently awakened an enemy that could destroy all life in the galaxy. So what do we do? Asked Commander Oh Ji-hoon. Rebuild the Empire? Go back to the way things were? That's impossible now, Dr. Lim So-young pointed out. Too many species have been restored to their original psychology. They won't accept oppression again, even to survive. Engineer Park Min-soo had been studying the Devourer technology through their sensor readings. Maybe we don't need the old kind of unity. Our adaptive AI has been analyzing their attack patterns. They're incredibly advanced, but they're still machines. They follow predictable algorithms. What are you suggesting? Kethril asked. A new kind of cooperation, Park replied. Not based on one species dominating others, but on voluntary coordination. Each species contributes their unique strengths while maintaining their independence. The idea seemed impossible. How could hundreds of different species, many of whom had been enemies for generations, work together without some central authority forcing cooperation? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Torval spoke up from his position among the refugee representatives. My people have a saying, he said. When the storm comes, even enemies share the same shelter. The Devourers are the storm. If we don't share the shelter, we all die alone. What followed was the most complex negotiation in galactic history. Representatives from 300 species, dozens of resistance groups, and the remnants of the Imperial military worked to create something that had never existed before, a voluntary alliance based on mutual respect rather than domination. The humans, despite being the newest members of galactic civilization, found themselves serving as mediators. Their outsider perspective and proven willingness to help others made them trusted by groups that would never trust each other. Admiral Kang proposed the basic structure. Each species maintains full sovereignty over their own worlds and people. But when facing external threats, we coordinate our response through elected representatives. No permanent rulers, no forced loyalty, just cooperation when it's needed most. The Galactic Confederation, as it came to be known, was imperfect and chaotic. Debates lasted for weeks. Some species walked out multiple times. There were threats, arguments, and at least 3 near duels between delegates. But slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. Species would contribute to a common defense fleet based on their capabilities, not their assigned roles. Technology would be shared freely, but no one would be forced to adopt modifications they didn't want. Most importantly, the genetic restoration technology would be made available to any species that requested it, ensuring that the Empire's loyalty protocols could never be used again. The first test of the new alliance came when the Devourers reached the Vega sector. Instead of the chaotic resistance they had faced elsewhere, they encountered a coordinated defense using the combined technologies and tactics of dozens of species. Captain Kim Tae-sung commanded a mixed fleet of human, Valtharian, and refugee ships, using tactics that combined Imperial discipline with human adaptability and the desperate creativity of beings fighting for their freedom. Remember, he broadcast to all ships, we're not fighting as separate species anymore. We're fighting as one galaxy against an invasion from outside. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Valtharian shield technology protected ships using human-designed adaptive hulls, while flying formations developed by former Imperial prisoners. The Devourers, programmed to exploit the weaknesses of individual species, found themselves facing an enemy that combined everyone's strengths while minimizing their individual vulnerabilities. For the first time since Awakening, the Devourers were stopped. The victory at Vega wasn't the end of the war. It lasted another 2 years and cost millions of lives. But it proved that the new Confederation could work. More importantly, it showed that unity didn't require uniformity, that cooperation didn't demand the surrender of independence. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of the Resilience, now serving as the flagship of the Confederation Defense Fleet, and watched the final Devourer machine being destroyed in the Outer Rim. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Admiral, Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin reported, we're receiving requests for mediation from 17 different sectors. Border disputes, trade disagreements, resource allocation conflicts. Kang smiled. It was messy, chaotic, and sometimes frustrating, but it was also free. The galaxy had learned that freedom wasn't the absence of problems. It was the right to solve those problems for yourself. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin looked up from his science station. Sir, I'm detecting some interesting energy signatures from the outer galaxy. It looks like we might have neighbors we haven't met yet. Hostile? Captain Lee Suman asked. Unknown, Yoon replied, but they're definitely watching us. Admiral Kang considered the implications. The galaxy had survived Imperial oppression and machine invasion, but there were still unknowns out there. Still challenges that would test their new confederation. Well, he said, settling back in his command chair, I guess that's tomorrow's problem. Today we're free, we're united, and we're still here. That's not a bad start. Navigation Officer Choi Bo-ram plotted a course back toward Earth where the Confederation was building its new capital. It would be a city where every species had a voice, where decisions were made through debate rather than decree, and where the mistakes of the past could be learned from rather than repeated. The Resilience turned toward home, carrying with it the hope that chaos and order, freedom and cooperation, could coexist in a galaxy that had room for everyone who was willing to respect the rights of others. Behind them, the galaxy settled into its new rhythm, messy, argumentative, and gloriously chaotically free. The world render emerged from hyperspace like a metal moon, its surface bristling with weapons that could crack planets and boil away oceans. High Counselor Karthek stood on its command bridge, watching the tactical display show 3 full Imperial fleets converging on the Kepler sector. where intelligence suggested the Earthship was hiding. "Status report," he commanded. "All fleets in position." "High Counselor," reported Fleet Admiral Vecthanos. "Over 2,000 ships in total. Long-range sensors have detected the target vessel near the ruins of HFY. Karthek smiled coldly. The humans had made a mistake by returning to help more refugees in the system they had already devastated. Now they would pay for their defiance with their lives, and their destruction would be broadcast across the Empire as a lesson to anyone else who might consider rebellion. "Charge the primary weapon," he ordered. "We'll vaporize the entire system. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who reject Imperial order." But aboard the Resilience, Admiral Kang was counting on Imperial arrogance. The ship the World Render's sensors had detected wasn't the real Resilience. It was a decoy built from salvaged refugee ship parts and broadcasting a fake energy signature. The real human ship was hidden in the asteroid belt, watching as the Empire's most powerful weapon prepared to destroy empty space. "They really are going to blow up an entire star system just to kill us," Captain Lee Sumin observed with disgust. "Not just to kill us," Dr. Yoon Haijin corrected. "To prove they can. To show everyone in the galaxy that resistance leads to annihilation." Engineer Park Min-soo looked up from his console with grim satisfaction. "Good news is we've finished analyzing the loyalty protocol data Dr. Lim retrieved. Bad news is we can't manufacture enough genetic restoration devices to help more than a few hundred people." Admiral Kang had been expecting this problem. Over the past weeks, he had been developing a plan so dangerous that he hadn't shared it with anyone except his most trusted officers. Now, with the Empire's ultimate weapon preparing to commit genocide, he knew it was time. "Assemble all senior staff," he ordered. "It's time for the Prometheus Gambit." When his officers gathered in the briefing room, Kang activated a secure holographic display showing technical specifications that made several of them gasp in shock. "This is our ship's adaptive AI system," he began. "The technology that lets us counter Imperial weapons and tactics in real time. It's more advanced than anything the Empire has, and it's the real reason we've been able to survive their attacks." Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin leaned forward. "Sir, are you suggesting we share our AI technology with the resistance movements?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Kang replied. "But not just our AI, all of it. Our ship designs, our tactical databases, our medical technology, everything that makes us effective." The room erupted in concerned voices. Captain Kim Tae-sung spoke for many of them. "Admiral, that technology is what keeps us alive. If we give it away and it falls into the wrong hands, if we don't give it away, billions of people will remain enslaved," Kang interrupted. "The Empire controls this galaxy through technological superiority. They've convinced everyone that resistance is impossible because they have better ships, better weapons, better everything. But our technology proves that's not true." Dr. Lim So-young raised a more practical concern. "Even if we wanted to share the technology, how would we distribute it? We're one ship against an empire." Commander Oh Ji-hoon had been thinking about the same problem. "The resistance networks we've been in contact with include members of dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. If we could package our technology in a way that adapts to their existing systems, that's the beautiful part," Engineer Park Min-soo said, beginning to understand the plan. "Our adaptive AI doesn't just counter enemy technology, it learns from it. If we release it into the galactic communication networks, it could spread to every resistance cell simultaneously, adapting itself to work with whatever equipment they have." The plan was audacious beyond belief. They would essentially give away humanity's greatest technological advantage and trust that other species would use it wisely. But as Admiral Kang pointed out, keeping their advantages to themselves hadn't prevented the Empire from building a weapon capable of destroying solar systems. "There's something else," he said, bringing up another display. "Sub-Admiral Kethrall sent us more intelligence. The Empire isn't just using the World Render as a weapon, it's using it as a test. They've been building more of them. If this one successfully destroys resistance in the Kepler sector, they plan to build a dozen more and use them to enforce loyalty protocol treatments across the entire galaxy." The weight of that revelation settled over the room. They weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of intelligent life in the galaxy. "All in favor of the Prometheus Gambit?" Admiral Kang asked. Every hand went up. Over the next 6 hours, The Resilience's crew worked frantically to package their most sensitive technology into a format that could be transmitted and understood by dozens of different species. Engineer Park Min-soo led the technical team, while Communications Officer Nam Yoo-jin coordinated with resistance networks to ensure maximum distribution. The broadcast began just as the World Render fired its primary weapon at the decoy ship. Across the galaxy, resistance fighters who had been hiding in the shadows suddenly found themselves with access to technology that made Imperial forces seem less invincible. Mining equipment was rapidly converted into ship weapons. Agricultural systems became sensor networks. Most importantly, the genetic restoration technology began spreading to worlds where loyalty protocol treatments had been implemented generations ago. The results were immediate and dramatic. On the industrial world of Vega 7, factory workers who had been docilely producing Imperial weapons for decades suddenly remembered what anger felt like and turned their factories into weapon-making facilities for the Resistance. On the agricultural planet of Ceres Delta, farmers who had been shipping food to Imperial military bases redirected their harvest to refugee camps. But the most significant change happened in the Imperial military itself. Thousands of soldiers from modified species found their natural capacity for moral judgment restored. Faced with orders to fire on civilian populations, many of them chose to desert rather than comply. High Counselor Karthek watched reports flood in from across the Empire and realized that his plan had backfired catastrophically. Instead of ending the Resistance, the destruction of the Kepler system had been the signal for a galaxy-wide revolution. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence networks reported only scattered resistance cells. Where did they get advanced technology?" The Earthship High Counselor, Fleet Admiral Vec Thanos, reported grimly. "Somehow they've shared their adaptive technology with resistance networks across the Empire. Our tactical advantages are being neutralized in real time. Then we use more world renders," Karthek decided. "We'll sterilize every system that shows signs of resistance." But even as he gave the order, Karthek knew that the Empire he had served for centuries was dying. You couldn't maintain order through fear alone when your subjects were no longer afraid. Aboard the Resilience, Admiral Kang monitored the galactic communication networks and watched their gambit succeed beyond their wildest hopes. But he also watched something darker emerge from the chaos. "Admiral," Dr. Yoon Hae-jin reported with concern, "we're receiving reports that some resistance groups are using our technology for aggressive expansion. The Altair Liberation Front just conquered 3 Imperial colonies and is implementing their own version of loyalty protocols on the survivors, and the Vegan Independence movement is using our ship designs to build a fleet for attacking civilian targets," added Navigation Officer Choi Bo-ram. "They say they're paying back the Empire for centuries of oppression." Admiral Kang felt a chill as he realized that their technological gift was being used not just to free the oppressed, but to create new oppressors. The galaxy was fracturing along lines they hadn't anticipated, with dozens of species deciding that their liberation meant it was their turn to dominate others. "Sir," Communications Officer Nam Yoo-jin said urgently, "I'm picking up something else. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the galactic core. Ships using technology I don't recognize heading toward Imperial space." Engineer Park Min-soo analyzed the sensor data and went pale. "Admiral, those aren't ships. They're machines, massive ones, and they're moving fast." Dr. Lim So-young looked up from her analysis station with fear in her eyes. "I've been reviewing Imperial historical databases we captured. There are references to something called the Devourers, ancient machine intelligences that the Empire has been keeping at bay for thousands of years. The references suggest they're attracted to chaos." The terrible irony hit Admiral Kang like a physical blow. By freeing the galaxy from Imperial control, they had created exactly the kind of widespread conflict that would draw the attention of something far worse than any organic tyranny. On the bridge of her ship, Sub-Admiral Kethral watched the same sensor readings and activated her ship's fastest communication systems. Her message to the Resilience was desperate and brief. The human broadcast changed everything. Within weeks, reports flooded in from across the Empire of unusual activity. Work slowdowns on industrial worlds, protests on agricultural planets. Most troubling of all, several Imperial garrison commanders reported that their own troops, members of subject species, were asking uncomfortable questions about their orders. High Counselor Karthik stood in the center of the Imperial command chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the growing unrest. Red warning symbols marked dozens of star systems where productivity had dropped or minor rebellions had begun. "One ship," he said to his assembled generals. "One primitive ship has created more chaos in 6 weeks than we've seen in 6 centuries. Fleet Admiral Vekthanos, a veteran of the last major Imperial expansion, studied the tactical displays. High Counselor, the problem isn't just the ship itself. It's what it represents. For 10,000 years, we've maintained order by demonstrating that resistance is impossible. This Earth vessel has proved that wrong. Then we make an example of them," Karthik declared. "Mobilize the 3rd, 7th, and 12th fleets. I want that ship found and destroyed. Broadcast the destruction across the Empire so everyone understands the price of defiance." Meanwhile, the Resilience was learning that being a symbol of resistance was more dangerous than they had imagined. Commander Oji-Hoon, who had been leading scouting missions and captured Imperial shuttles, returned with disturbing news. "Admiral," he reported to Kang, "the Empire isn't just looking for us. They're cracking down hard on anyone who might be sympathetic to our message. I saw an entire mining colony on Zarian 7 loaded into prison ships. Their crime was celebrating when they heard our broadcast." Dr. Yoon Hai-jin looked up from his analysis of Imperial communication intercepts. "It gets worse. From what I can decipher, they're implementing something called enhanced loyalty protocols on dozens of worlds. I think it means forced medical treatments to make populations more compliant." The weight of unintended consequences pressed down on Admiral Kang. They had wanted to help refugees, not start a galaxy-wide revolution that was getting innocent people hurt. "Sir," Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin said, "we're receiving a coded transmission. It's from someone claiming to be inside the Imperial military." The message, when decoded, was brief but shocking. "This is Sub-Admiral Kethral of the Imperial 4th Fleet. I have information you need. The Empire plans to use the Zarian 7 prisoners as bait to draw you into a trap. More importantly, the enhanced loyalty protocols are not what you think. Meet me at coordinates included in this message. Come alone." Captain Lee Sumin frowned at the message. "It's obviously a trap." "Probably," Admiral Kang agreed. "But if there's even a chance this sub-admiral is legitimate, we need to know what these loyalty protocols really are." Against his crew's protests, Kang took a shuttle to the meeting coordinates, a dead system on the edge of Imperial space. To his surprise, he found a single Imperial ship waiting. Not a massive dreadnought, but a small cruiser running dark. Sub-Admiral Kethral turned out to be a Valtherian, but unlike the rigid fleet commander they had first encountered. She seemed tired, even ashamed, as she explained why she had risked everything to contact them. "Admiral Kang," she said, "I have served the Empire for 80 years. I believed we brought order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds. Your ship made me question those beliefs, so I started investigating our methods more closely." She activated a holographic display showing medical data that made Kang's blood run cold. "The enhanced loyalty protocols aren't just medical treatments," Kethral continued. "They're genetic modifications designed to eliminate the capacity for independent thought. Species that undergo the full treatment become incapable of questioning authority, of feeling anger at injustice, even of protecting their own children if ordered not to." "How long has this been happening?" Kang asked. 3,000 years, Kethral admitted. "We've been systematically removing free will from entire populations. I estimate that 60% of the species in the Empire have undergone some level of modification. They're not really alive anymore, Admiral. They're biological machines." The revelation hit Kang like a physical blow. The Empire wasn't just oppressive, it was systematically destroying the very essence of what made intelligent beings who they were. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because your ship proved something I had never seen before," she replied. "It proved that free will makes people stronger, not weaker. Your crew fought off 15 Imperial ships because they chose to fight, not because they were programmed to. That kind of strength, we've been afraid of it for so long that we forgot what it looked like." Kethral provided Kang with detailed intelligence about Imperial fleet movements, prison ship routes, and the locations of worlds scheduled for loyalty protocol implementation. But she also gave him a warning. "High Counselor Karthik is mobilizing everything," she said. 3 full fleets, over 2,000 ships. He's convinced that destroying your vessel will end the resistance movement." "Will it?" Kang asked. "I don't know," Kethral admitted. But I hope not. I hope that what you've started has spread too far to stop. When Admiral Kang returned to the Resilience, he found his crew already preparing for their most ambitious mission yet. Based on intelligence from sympathetic refugees, they had identified an Imperial prison ship carrying the Zarian 7 colonists and hundreds of other political prisoners. It's heavily defended, Captain Kim Tae-sung reported. 6 escort ships, all of them bigger than us. But, Engineer Park Min-soo added with a grin, they're not expecting us to attack. They think we'll run from anything that outnumbers us. The rescue mission took place in the Helix Nebula, where sensor interference would help mask their approach. Commander Oh Ji-hoon led a boarding party while the Resilience engaged the escort ships in the kind of chaotic battle that had become their signature. The Imperial ships found themselves fighting an enemy that broke every rule of space combat. The Resilience used the nebula's gas clouds as cover, fired from impossible angles, and at one point actually rammed an enemy ship before spinning away to attack another target. They're not following any tactical doctrine, the prison ship commander reported frantically. They're fighting like they're making it up as they go along. That was exactly what they were doing. Human military doctrine had always emphasized adaptability over rigid planning. And in space combat, that flexibility was proving devastatingly effective. Within an hour, 4 of the escort ships were disabled and the other 2 had retreated. Commander Oh's boarding team had freed over 3,000 prisoners from dozens of different species. But the most important rescue happened in the prison ship's medical bay, where Dr. Lim So-young made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral," she reported, her voice shaking, "these prisoners, they were being prepared for loyalty protocol treatment. But I found something else. The process is reversible." She showed him a small device she had taken from the Imperial medical equipment. "This is a genetic restoration matrix. It can undo the loyalty modifications, restore a species' natural capacity for independent thought." The implications were staggering. They weren't just fighting to prevent future modifications. They might be able to free the billions of beings who had already been changed. News of the prison ship rescue spread even faster than their original broadcast. Across the Empire, resistance movements began to organize more boldly. Industrial accidents mysteriously increased on military production worlds. Supply convoys started disappearing. Most significantly, several Imperial garrison commanders found themselves facing mutinies from their own supposedly loyal troops. In the Imperial capital, High Counselor Karthek watched his empire begin to fracture and knew that half measures would no longer suffice. "Activate the world render," he commanded. His advisors recoiled in shock. The world render was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a moon-sized battle station capable of destroying entire star systems. It had been built to deter external threats, not to use against the Empire's own territory. "High Counselor," Fleet Admiral Vecthanos protested, "the world render has never been used in combat. The collateral damage will serve as an example to every world in the Empire," Karthek finished. "Find me a system where this Earthship has provided aid. Evacuate our personnel. Then show the galaxy what happens to those who harbor enemies of Imperial order." As the world render began its slow journey toward the outer territories, Sub-Admiral Kethril watched from her ship and realized she had to make a choice. She could remain a loyal Imperial officer and watch billions die, or she could complete her betrayal of everything she had once believed in. She activated her ship's fastest courier drone and programmed it with a simple message for the Resilience. "They're coming with everything they have. You have changed too much to be stopped now, but you may not survive what comes next. The galaxy is waking up because of you. Don't let it fall asleep again." Aboard the Resilience, Admiral Kang read the message and understood that their time as a single ship fighting impossible odds was coming to an end. Soon they would face a choice: run and preserve themselves, or make a stand that might cost them everything but could save the galaxy. News of the unclassifiable ship spread through the Galactic Empire faster than light itself. In the crystal spires of the Imperial capital, High Counselor Karthek studied reports from 17 different fleets, all telling the same impossible story. A primitive ship had appeared, refused classification, and then fought off Imperial forces using tactics that made no sense. "Explain to me," Karthek said to his assembled advisors, his voice cold as space itself, "how a single vessel using obsolete technology defeated the 7th Fleet." The advisors, members of various species that had long ago accepted their place in the Empire, shifted nervously. None of them had an answer that wouldn't sound like an excuse. High Counselor, ventured Science Advisor Meltar. Perhaps the vessel wasn't as primitive as it appeared. Some species have been known to disguise advanced technology. Then why didn't our sensors detect the deception? Karthik's eyes glowed brighter, a sign of increasing anger. Why can't our best scientists identify their power source, their weapons, or even what species built the ship? Meanwhile, the Resilience drifted quietly in an asteroid field, running silent while its crew tried to understand what they had stumbled into. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin worked at his science station, analyzing the data they had collected during the battle. It's not just one empire, he told Admiral Kang. From what I can tell from their ship configurations and communication protocols, they control thousands of star systems, maybe tens of thousands. Navigation Officer Choi Boram looked up from her star charts. I've been trying to figure out where we are. Based on the stellar positions, we're at least 20,000 light-years from Earth. If this empire is as big as Dr. Yoon thinks, we might be completely surrounded. The thought hung heavy in the air. They were one ship far from home in the territory of a power that spanned half the galaxy. Sir, Communications Officer Nam Yoo-jin said suddenly, I'm picking up a distress signal. It's weak, but it's not using Imperial frequencies. Put it through, Admiral Kang ordered. The signal was filled with static, but they could make out voices speaking in several different languages. None of them sounded like the formal galactic standard used by the Imperial fleet. Can you clean it up? Kang asked. Nam Yoo-jin worked for several minutes filtering out interference and boosting the signal. Finally, a clear voice came through, speaking broken galactic standard with an accent they had never heard before. This is cargo vessel Wandering Star. We carry refugees from the Kepler sector. Imperial forces destroyed our homeworlds. We have children aboard. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. Dr. Lim So-young stood up from her medical station. Admiral, if they have children in distress, and Kang nodded. He had never been able to ignore a call for help. Nam, can you trace the signal? Already on it, sir. They're about 6 hours away at best speed. Take us there, Kang ordered. But keep us ready to run if this is a trap. The refugee ship was nothing like the sleek Imperial vessels they had encountered. It was a patchwork of different technologies, clearly repaired many times with whatever materials were available. As the Resilience approached, they could see scorch marks and hull breaches that had been sealed with metal plates welded over the damage. Resilience, this is Captain Torval of the Wandering Star, came a weary voice. Thank the ancestors we thought no one would answer. Are you with the Empire? No, Admiral Kang replied. We're from a place called Earth. We heard your distress call. There was a long pause. Earth, that name is not in our databases. Are you truly not Imperial? We're not part of any empire, Captain Lee Soo-min assured him. What kind of help do you need? What followed was a story that made the humans' blood run cold. Captain Torval described how Imperial forces had arrived at his homeworld of Kepler-Prime with an ultimatum. The planet's resources were needed for a new construction project. The population would be relocated to a more suitable world where they could be more productive. When our leaders asked for time to consider, the Imperial fleet opened fire, Torval said, his voice breaking. They said delay was inefficient. They destroyed our cities from orbit, then used gravity weapons to strip mine the entire planet. We managed to escape with 3 ships and 800 people. The Empire considers us criminals for refusing relocation. Engineer Park Min-soo listened to the story with growing anger. They destroyed an entire world because the people wanted time to think? Dr. Yoon Hae-jin was studying scans of the refugee ship. Torval, can you tell us more about these relocations? How many worlds have been affected? In our sector alone? 43 worlds in the last century. The Empire calls it optimization. They say they're creating a more efficient galaxy where every species serves according to their abilities. And who decides what those abilities are? Captain Kim Tae-sung asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Valtherian Council, Torval replied bitterly. They've been the dominant species in this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They decide where everyone lives, what jobs they do, even how many children they can have. All for the greater good of the Empire, they say. The Resilience's crew exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand what kind of empire they had refused to join. Sir, Dr. Lim So-young said, I'm detecting medical emergencies aboard their ship, malnutrition, radiation exposure, and what looks like several women in difficult childbirth. Admiral Kang didn't hesitate. "Prepare for medical evacuation. We'll transfer their most critical cases to our sickbay." "Admiral," Captain Lee Suman said quietly, "if we help them, we'll be marking ourselves as enemies of the Empire." Kang looked at the image of the damaged refugee ship on their view screen, then at his crew. Every face showed the same determination he felt. "If helping people makes us enemies of that empire," he said, "then I guess we know which side we're on." Over the next several hours, the Resilience's medical team worked to save lives, while the ship's engineers helped repair the refugees' most critical systems. During this time, Captain Torval shared more details about the Empire's methods. "They don't just relocate people," he explained to Dr. Yoon Hai-jin. "They modify them. Medical treatments that make species more cooperative, less aggressive, genetic alterations that make them better suited for specific types of work. They call it helping us reach our full potential." "That's not helping," Dr. Lim So-young said angrily. "That's erasing who you are." Navigation Officer Choi Bo-ram was studying star charts with some of the refugees, trying to understand the scope of the Empire. What she learned was sobering. According to their data, she reported to Admiral Kang, the Empire controls 40,000 star systems. They have over 300 member species, but only the Valtharanes hold positions of real authority. Everyone else serves in roles chosen for them. Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin had been monitoring Imperial communications while they worked. "Admiral, I think we have a problem. Imperial fleets are searching for us in a pattern that suggests they know roughly where we are." "How is that possible?" Engineer Park Min-soo asked. "We've been running silent." "I think they're tracking the refugees," Nam replied. "Every time we help someone who's fled Imperial authority, we become easier to find." Admiral Kang considered their options. They could abandon the refugees and disappear into deep space, hoping to find a way back to Earth. Or they could accept that they were now part of a conflict they had never asked to join. He looked at Captain Torval, who was holding his newborn daughter. The child had been born during their medical evacuation, healthy and alive because human doctors had been there to help. "Nam," Kang said, "patch me through to all the refugee ships in this sector." "It's time we introduced ourselves properly." "Sir?" she asked. "If the Empire wants to find us, let's make it easy for them," Kang replied. "But let's also make sure everyone else knows there's someone out here who doesn't think the Empire gets to decide how the galaxy works." Within hours, the first human broadcast in galactic history was spreading across the Empire's communication networks. It was simple, direct, and completely unprecedented. "This is Admiral Kang Daeho of the Earth vessel Resilience. We are not part of your Empire. We do not recognize your authority over free peoples. To anyone listening who needs help, we hear you. To the Empire, we're not going anywhere." In the crystal spires of the Imperial capital, High Counselor Karthik listened to the broadcast with growing fury. In 10,000 years of Imperial history, no one had ever issued such a direct challenge to their authority. He began drafting orders for the largest fleet mobilization in Imperial history. This unknown species would learn their place, or they would be erased from existence. But in the outer territories of the Empire, on worlds where people had learned to keep their heads down and accept their assigned roles, the broadcast had a different effect. For the first time in generations, some of them began to remember what it felt like to hope. The stars looked different here. Admiral Kang Daeho stared at the view screen of the human ship Resilience, watching unfamiliar constellations spin slowly past. The experimental jump drive had worked, but not the way they expected. Instead of arriving at the test coordinates near Mars, they found themselves in deep space, surrounded by ships they had never seen before. "Sir, we have company," Captain Lee Soo-min said from her position at the tactical station. Her voice stayed calm, but Kang could hear the tension underneath. 15 ships in formation. They're big, really big. The alien vessels were sleek and silver, each one 3 times larger than the Resilience. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy patterns that pulsed like heartbeats. These ships belonged to someone who had been building starships for a very long time. On the bridge of the lead alien vessel, Fleet Commander Zix Thara studied the strange new ship that had appeared in the middle of her training exercise. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she tried to make sense of what her sensors were telling her. Science Officer Kevinal, "Report," she commanded. The younger Valtharian hunched over his console, his scaled hands dancing across holographic displays. "Commander, this vessel defies classification. It appears to be using primitive fusion reactors for power, but somehow achieved faster than light travel. The hull is made of refined metals we stopped using 10,000 years ago." Zixthera's chest plates fluttered with confusion. In her 2 centuries of service to the Galactic Empire, she had never encountered a ship that didn't fit into their vast database of known technologies. Every species in the galaxy had been catalogued, classified, and assigned their proper place in the Empire's hierarchy. "Perhaps it's an archaeological vessel," suggested her weapons officer. "Some museum piece that someone got running again." "No," Kevnal said, studying his readings more carefully. "The life forms aboard, they're completely unknown, carbon-based, bipedal, but their energy signatures are unlike anything in our files." Aboard the Resilience, Engineer Park Min-soo was having similar problems. "Admiral, I can't make sense of their technology. It's like they're using gravity itself as a construction material, and their energy output—" He shook his head. "Each of those ships has more power than our entire home fleet." Navigation Officer Choi Boram looked up from her station. "Sir, they're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Standard mathematical sequences, then—" "Wait." Her eyes widened. "They're speaking Galactic Standard." Kang raised an eyebrow. Earth's linguists had worked for decades to decode the scattered alien signals they occasionally picked up from deep space. Galactic Standard was supposed to be theoretical. "Put it through," he ordered. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. Zixthera had smooth-scaled skin that shifted from deep blue to silver, and her 4 eyes studied them with obvious intelligence. When she spoke, her words were formal and precise. "Unknown vessel, you have violated Imperial space without authorization. Submit to immediate boarding and classification procedures. Failure to comply will result in your vessel being impounded and your crew detained for processing." Captain Kim Tae-sung, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. "Processing? That doesn't sound good." Dr. Yoon Hae-jin, who had been studying alien cultural patterns for years, spoke quietly. "In authoritarian societies, processing usually means they decide what happens to you based on how useful you are to them." Admiral Kang stood up and smoothed his uniform. "Open a channel." The bridge fell silent as he stepped in front of the view screen. When he spoke, his voice was polite but firm. "Fleet Commander, I am Admiral Kang Dae-ho of the Earth vessel Resilience. We appreciate your offer of assistance, but we're just passing through. We'll be on our way shortly." On her bridge, Zixthera's chest plates went completely still. In 10,000 years of Imperial history, no species had ever politely declined classification. It simply wasn't done. New species submitted to the Empire's wisdom, accepted their assigned role, and were grateful for the opportunity to serve. "You misunderstand," she said slowly. "This is not an offer. All vessels in Imperial space must be classified. All species must be evaluated and assigned appropriate status within the Empire's structure. This is Imperial law." Communications Officer Nam Yu-jin was monitoring their conversations on multiple frequencies. She could hear other alien ships talking to each other, their voices filled with confusion and concern. Nobody seemed to know what to do with humans who said no to an empire. "Admiral," Dr. Lim So-young said quietly from her medical station, "I'm picking up transmissions from their other ships. They're asking their headquarters what to do. I don't think they've ever had anyone refuse classification before." Kang nodded. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but humans had never been good at accepting someone else's idea of their place in the universe. "Fleet Commander," he said, "Earth is not part of your empire. We don't recognize your authority over our vessel or our crew. We'll be leaving now." "That is not acceptable," Zixthera replied. "You will submit to boarding or we will take you by force." The alien ships began moving into an attack formation, their weapons charging with ominous energy buildups. Engineer Park Min-soo's hands flew over his controls as he brought the Resilience's defensive systems online. "Sir, their weapons are more advanced than anything we've ever seen," he reported. "But I'm getting some interesting readings from their targeting systems." "What kind of readings?" Captain Lee Soo-min asked. Park smiled grimly. "They're using predictive algorithms. Very sophisticated ones, but still based on known patterns of ship behavior. They're trying to guess what we'll do based on what other species have done before." The problem was, no other species had ever fought like humans. When the first alien ship fired its energy beam, the Resilience wasn't where it expected. Captain Kim Tae-sung had programmed an evasive pattern that made no tactical sense according to standard military doctrine, which was exactly why it worked. The human ship spun and twisted through space like a dancer, its fusion drives flaring in directions that should have torn it apart. But human engineering had always been about making things work under impossible conditions. "Return fire," Admiral Kang ordered. The Resilience unleashed a barrage of kinetic projectiles, simple metal slugs accelerated to tremendous speeds. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered little protection against chunks of dense matter moving at a significant fraction of light speed. One of the alien ships staggered as the projectiles punched through its hull. On her bridge, Zixthera stared at her tactical display in disbelief. "How are they doing this?" "Their technology is primitive." "Unknown, Commander," her weapons officer replied. "Their ship moves in completely unpredictable patterns. Our targeting computers can't establish a lock. Then target manually. We're trying, but they're not following any known combat doctrines. They should have been destroyed minutes ago, but they keep doing things that shouldn't work." As if to prove his point, the Resilience suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest alien ship, then at the last second fired its maneuvering thrusters and slid sideways, raking the enemy vessel with another kinetic barrage before spinning away. "We can't identify that ship," Zixthera's science officer reported, his voice filled with frustrated confusion. "It's locked onto us, but we don't understand how or why it's still fighting." The battle continued for 20 more minutes before Admiral Kang decided they had made their point. The Resilience activated its experimental drive and vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving 15 confused alien ships floating in empty space. Behind them, the Galactic Empire began asking a question it had never needed to ask before. What do you do with people who refuse to know their place?